Hey everyone, and welcome back to hockeyprospects.com YouTube channel. I'm Jérôme Bérubé, and as always, I'm joined by Brad Allen. Brad, we have a new team, the Detroit Red Wings, that we're gonna take a look at their prospect pool, and actually our ranking of their top 10 prospects. So let's take a look at what we have, and let's start um, by sharing the screen first of all, and then maybe first quick thoughts on their prospect pool here. We did mention a bit about some of those players in one of our recent video recapping their draft class of 225, but as overall as their prospect pool here, what are you seeing here? Because there's quite a few good prospects on that list here.
Yeah, it's deep. That's the main thing I see is I see a lot of depth and a lot of players with high floors and a lot of compete. There's a lot of competitive players on this list, and I think a lot of them are going to end up translating. I'd be surprised if most of them didn't translate, which you usually don't say in about a top 10. So yeah, it's well rounded too, and arguably the best goalie pool in the world. I would say best goalie pool on earth. So that's good news for Detroit. I think they're. What they really need is like one more Carter Bear level prospect. That would be really, really beneficial to this pool. I'm sure they don't want that, though, because that means they miss the playoffs again, and they do not want that to happen this season. This season's a big pressure cooker season, I think, for them. So obviously it really helps when Emmett Finney, 7th-round pick, is really looking the part. I actually watched him in the offseason in the summer, because I didn't know his game well enough at all. And, did I think he'd accelerate to this degree this fast? No. But when I watched him, I said, oh, there's certainly hidden value here. Like, he looked very good when I was watching him, like very intelligent player, well-rounded, plays the right way, plays hard, which again, that's like the theme of this pool.
Yeah, so we can maybe start at the top with Carter Bear. As I mentioned, we did touch a bit on him in our draft review videos, but for those who don't know, we were really high on Carter Bear last year. We at the end we ranked him 10th, but if it was not for the injury, he would have been probably in the 6, 7, 8 range for the draft. So we have a lot of time for him. Elite compete level with that player, plays the right way, underrated playmaking skills with him, plays inside. He's not a unicorn type player, but it's tough to find players like him. You can say, I think Brad, you mentioned he's a bit of a Brandon Eagle type player. We had other comparable last year, but I think the Brandon Eagle one is a good one. It's actually one that Carter Barrett mentioned that
I didn't even know that, honestly.
Yeah.
I had no idea that he mentioned Daigle.
So he does watch a lot of Braden Eagle, and does compare his game to him. So hey, if he's Braden Eagle 2.0, I think the Red Wings and their fans will be pretty happy with that selection. So he's a clear-cut number one guy for us. Axel Sandin-Pellikka, who's with the Red Wings right now, made the team out of camp. He's actually like a smaller D, but he has there's a lot to like about his game. I think right now at the NHL level, it's a bit of a up and down situation with him. I think last I checked, I think he was playing with Edvinsson, and I think the duo is struggling a bit lately based on what I saw this past week. But anyway, yeah, Pellikka looks like a guy will be probably their power play quarterback of the future. Sider does a pretty good job, but I think Pellikka might have a bit more upside to really help their power play. So that's the top two, and then we have the two goalies here with Casa and Augustine. We're still, Brad, we're still big believer of Casa, but we knew he was going to take time. Like 6'6" goalie, and then it showed. Like, he started his pro career in the East Coast League just to play. That was a bit of an issue in the WHL. His draft year was the COVID year. So he played like, I don't remember how many games he played, but not many. So
20 or something like that.
yeah, so that was a problem. And also Edmonton was really good. So what happens when a team is really good? You don't see a lot of shots. So that was another issue with him, and so we knew he was going to take time. Um, and Augustine is still at Michigan State. I guess he's in the same boat because Michigan State is really good. So, is he really getting tested a lot? You know, Michigan State is not going to lose a lot of games this year, basically. But Augustine has been like a really good goalie at the international level for Team USA in the past 2 years. So, like you said, like it's a really good combo of goalie prospect to have for them. Obviously we still like Costa a bit more, but it's 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 not a bad news for the Red Wings. They have two solid goalie prospect here, and maybe Brad, you want to touch a bit on those two, and if you want to touch on other guys too, please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like the big thing here with the goal team, I know for some of you to have it reversed, it's extremely close. Like really, really close and tight between them. The bed here is on the upside, right? So right now, Augustine is ahead of Costa. He's ahead mechanically, and he's ahead from a coordination perspective because he's much smaller, right? So the thing with large goalies is that one of the reasons they need so much time is because it takes them that much longer to adapt to their technique at their size, right? So that's part of the issue with Costa. Now, admittedly, Augustine is a bit more consistent mentally than Costa at this stage. But again, that's another thing where you don't really know until they're 25, 25, 26, and their neuroplasticity dies down a bit and they become what they're ultimately going to become mentally. So one of those situations where I totally get it if somebody's like, I'd flip it. Something we've debated internally multiple times, but let's put it this way. They both, to me, look like they could be 1As, and they might end up doing what like Greaves and Merzlikins are doing right now, where you see them in a split. You might get a true split with them in the future. To Jerome's point, like with Pellica, the huge difference between him and the rest of their defensemen on the power play is his shot. His shot is ridiculous. Like he can really rip a puck. Yeah. Scored a ton in the SHL. But unlike Niels Lundqvist, who couldn't hold, it looks like Sandin Pellica will hold defensively well enough. And that was the huge issue in his draft season. That was one of the reasons he actually fell to Detroit. It wasn't the hockey sense. It wasn't the offensive instincts. It was that he was extremely passive at times in the defensive zone. Now, I attributed some of that to conditioning. To me, it looked like his conditioning wasn't there. And when his conditioning died down, he started puck watching. And I think that's basically what happened because he's much better with his motor and understanding how to defend at a higher rate now than he did in his draft year. Nate Danielson, like what a weird player. He reminds me a little bit of like the Voynich manuscript. I don't know if any of you know that. It's like a famous book that was passed down for like 600 years through it's an alchemy book. So like maybe might have been written by a schizophrenic who was an alchemist who was trying to sell it and ended up in the hands of like a Romanian emperor, but they don't know what it is and they can't decode the language is my point. And I can't decode Nate Danielson because on paper he should be a top 6 forward all day, and then you get past that surface level, you get back and he like let's put it this way, in his draft year he is one of the best skaters in that class, and he does have a good shot from a mechanical perspective, and he can shoot at full speed, and he scored 1 goal off the rush at full speed in his draft year. Like, he's just absolutely bizarre player. Really weird. And they're like, oh, you know what? Maybe he's just not this talented as I thought. Then he goes through 4 players with his hands. He ends up with like one of the best highlight reel goals of the year. It's like, all right, I don't know, like why is this not happening more often? Why are you not more productive relative to what we see with your skating and talent level? That's always been my issue with this player. It still is. So, I've talked to some people in the organization about him. They think he's a 3C long-term. I agree with that. I think he is a 3C, even though talent-wise and on any given play, he looks like he's more than that. So it is what it is. Michael Branson-Nygaard, this player, I feel like, at the 6th slot, your pool is pretty good if Michael Branson-Nygaard's in your 6th slot. Like, that's the way I look at this pool. So Nygaard, I think it's impossible for him not to play. So, like, top 6 players here, I think, are almost guaranteed to play in some capacity. And Emmett Finney certainly doesn't look like he's not going to play either, does it? So, and then Eddie Genberg is one of the biggest misses we had last year. I'm already conceding defeat. Detroit got him. We didn't. I'll be shocked if Genberg doesn't play in at least a depth role. So it's like you're getting to the ninth slot where there's even any question if they're going to play. And Mazur, I wouldn't bet against Mazur at this stage. He's been injured a lot. You know, if he hasn't been injured, I'm willing to bet he already would have been in the NHL full time. And Sverchik, I think, is one of the highest floor fourth rounders in recent draft history. So, I mean, I think Detroit's done a really good job here. You know, they like, what's really missing? You know, it's again, besides that blue chip, like elite level player that I mean, Carter Bear, we think is that. But having one more of those wouldn't hurt. And like if Sand and Pella can not only hold defensively, but start dominating defensively in the coming years and start really developing that, I mean, maybe he becomes a true number one, and then that's what they absolutely have to have. But you know, the only way for this to go sideways is one of Kosa or Augustine or both don't actually translate, which is possible. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's possible. And then if some of these depth players or not even depth players, middle six role players don't develop. So like if Nygaard somehow ends up not developing, if Finney has this be his best run ever, if Genberg isn't what we think he is, where he's blown us away in the SHL here and looked really good in preseason, if that dies down next season, that's the only way for this pool not to become pretty darn good. And I don't think any of that happens personally. I think it's a heck of a pool.
Yeah, I mean the Red Wings have like sometimes like we can scout players, but we can also scout teams how they draft, and the Red Wings have gone like with very safe pick at the draft. You look at Danielson was a very safe pick. Like they took him in the top 10. We had him a bit later in the first round. We, you mentioned they project him as a 3C. That was our projection in his draft year. We didn't think that as the skill level was there, but we just didn't think we didn't have any proof that the offense was going to be, good enough for top 6.
One thing I forgot to mention, you're just reminding me, Jerome, was the lateral trend playmaking rates. They were so inconsistent. One of the most inconsistent players at laterally setting up his teammates we've ever evaluated, and it made no sense because his skating allows him to separate. This is a player where he gets closed on. So it was basically his passing trajectories would fail even though he had time and space.
Yeah,
which
he's a great skater.
It's more of like a spatial awareness issue than anything, right? A spacing issue.
Yeah, he's got good size. He can really skate. He can really shoot the puck, but he's just not a gifted, finisher. And the playmaking in transition, as you mentioned, was like the playmaking was good actually in the ozone. Like a lot of down low playmaking from him, but in transition it was a bit more difficult.
Trailing options he could hit them, and down low to high from around the goal line he could hit, but at speed, laterally adjusting his options, he couldn't do it. Again, like that's the thing. Everybody loves to generalize prospects. Like when we peel back those layers, you see some really weird inconsistencies in prospects that like kind of separate them and make them their own individual thing. And Nate Danielson is like one of the best representations that ever. Like again, there's a reason I compare him to that weird untranslatable manuscript. Like he's weird. He's a very strange player, and it's not really talked about or brought up because again, most people that do this publicly, they don't watch as much as honestly. The one thing we could say, we watch a whole lot of hockey. So it's one of those things too where I mean Detroit. It's from a philosophical perspective. It's interesting where they took him because they drafted him in 9th overall. Right. So usually if you're looking at top 10, you're always trying to project top 6 forward, top 4D. Like that's always your goal. But, maybe they felt at that time they didn't see that. So they took the center that they absolutely knew had the capacity to play long term.
Yeah. I mean, maybe at that time they thought he had chance to be a second line center. The more time passed, more the projection seems more safer as a 3C. Nygaard, like it's tough to not like this player with his. That kid can really shoot a puck. We saw it in Sweden. We saw it at the World Championship, also World Junior. Really, so he can be maybe I guess top six, middle six type player, but could be really useful on a power play if you set him up on the power play. Um, and then, so I was gonna say like Marco Casper is another guy. They have drafted a lot of safe middle six player in recent years. Also, if you look at Feeney, you look at Ganborg, you look at Masur, you look at Svirsek, all high compete guys. And obviously, you mentioned Carter Bear, Mr. Compete level right there. So there's a trend here with what the Red Wings are looking at the draft. So they're looking at um, safe player um, and guys that really compete. So I think you look at this list, a lot of those guys will be NHLer. Don't know if it's going to be all in Detroit. So at some point, they might want to trade some of their prospects to, to get better and actually become like real every year consistent as a playoff team. So, and obviously, like they really need to make the playoff really soon, for for their sake. So, I think that's gonna, maybe Brad, you have anything else you want to mention about their prospect pool? But I think that's gonna do
We
it.
could maybe touch on a couple HMs there, a couple
Yeah,
honorable
sure.
mentions.
Yeah.
How about so William Wallinder, phenomenal toolkit. He was always a long-term prospect, very raw defensively, raw decision making. I remember in J20, we'd never seen a player attempt that many individual rushes from his own end before. Like he has the record to this day of individual rush chances per 60 in J20 from our scouting experience. So he had no idea what he was doing. And that's okay, right? Because the toolkit was crazy. And in J20, it's very loose relative to, like, say, the OHL or WHL as a contrast. And then he was brought up the Allsvenskan. And again, it showed that the decision-making wasn't there at that time. But again, defensemen are a strange bunch in the sense that as long as they process at a high rate, you can kind of reconfigure how they go about their business in terms of being able to exit correctly. And so that was the bet that Detroit made. And it's still, like, don't get me wrong, he's running out of time, but I wouldn't totally give up on him. Like, he just missed our 10 slot type of thing. Is there anyone else, Strom, that you want to
We
mention
could
there?
talk about Dmitry Buchelnikov,
Shelnikov, yeah.
who's doing well in the KHL in Russia. So yeah, he's same thing for him. He could have been in the top 10. We think Severik probably as maybe as a safer bet to play in the NHL, even though he's much younger. But that's how much we like this player. So we decided to keep him at number 10. But yeah, Buchelnikov could be a guy that gets some NHL games at some point. But he's a smaller guy. And he has not really, in his draft year, we thought he was going to be like a good KHL player. That was the projection we had. So that's why we didn't. I don't think we ranked him in his. No, actually, we ranked him like as a late pick. So,
Well, one thing, Jerome, we should mention. So, like, we got a lot of flack for the Ken Saroff selection because of how dominant he's been offensively, production-wise. But Shilnikov has a lot of production too. One thing you got to take into consideration, we watch a lot of Russian hockey. One thing I'll say, the KHL isn't what it used to be. Like the KHL, if you could put up like a point per game back like 10 years ago at 19-20 in the KHL, it meant like you were basically guaranteed to play in the NHL full time. It's not that simple anymore. There are some players that really honestly are not as dominant or dynamic as you think that produce quite a bit better in the KHL now. And so we try to take that into consideration and try to adapt to the league quality. And so that's one of the reasons we don't pay as much attention to the scoring rates as we used to. So we're that's one of the reasons, for instance, Buchelnikov just fell outside the top 10 because, like, yes, he is extremely talented. He's extremely dangerous on a power play and off the rush. But if you get him in the NHL, like, his defensive ability might be so poor along the walls and being able to support correctly defensively that they just can't give him any minutes, right? So that happens. Whereas Furchek, like we think he might be one of the best specialized penalty killers in the league, right? So yes, he does not have the talent level of Bashilnikov or the production of Bashilnikov, most likely at the same age, but it's one of those situations where we're looking at the floor relative to the ceiling there. And I mean, that's scouting 101. I mean, this why making lists is so difficult in general, even just a top 10 list as opposed to the actual draft list for the respective year.
Yeah, obviously we love drafting out of scouting out of Russia, but you have to learn sometime. Like we have seen some guys that were posting pretty good numbers in Russia, came over North America, and just didn't work out. So there's a bit of a sometime a lesson to be learned as a scout. Sometime, as you mentioned, the KHL is not as good as it was for the past 3 years. So the quality is a bit not as good and you see a lot of younger player getting more chance to play in the KHL a lot more now than it used to be back in 5-7 years ago. So any other guys that we might forget? I think maybe one guy that I
Protl,
like.
I mentioned Protl in the other segment, but Protl is an HM for sure. Like Michael
Yeah,
Protl
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
legitimately could be a very good backup in the NHL, maybe more, maybe a 1B one day as well. Like again, they have the best depth, I think, out of anybody in net. Like Kosa, Augustine, Protl, you are doing a-okay
I mean,
in terms of
if
depth.
we do a list like this next year, like you'll see Prado on that list.
You'll be on it, yeah.
Obviously, Pelika will be probably not on the list anymore. Will be a full-time NHLer. I mean, who knows with Emmett Finney? Like, is he gonna stick up with the Red Wings all year? But he's off. He's
The
off
way
to a
he's
good
playing,
start.
he's not going anywhere.
Yeah,
he's
I
not
know.
going. He's removed my beloved Soderblom. The Blom has been ejected here from the ice because of him. So yeah, it's one of those situations. It breaks my heart. I love Elmer Soderblom, but he's off to a bad start this year. So Emmett Finney's taking advantage.
Yeah. All right. I think that's going to wrap up our look at the Red Wings prospect pool. If you have any other opinion, Red Wings fans, you can write them in the comment section. Me and Brad will usually reply to you and have some conversation in the comment section. So if you disagree or agree with us, don't be shy. So that's going to wrap up the Red Wings video. Our next video will be about the Edmonton Oilers. So we're going from a team with a lot of prospect to a team with not many prospect. So stay tuned for that. So thanks, Brad, and thanks everyone for watching. And we'll see you guys very soon.
Take care, everyone.